And we know that these guys in ISIS actually were trained by our government to fight in Syria. And so we learn much more about them, and the public sees. And what's really, really, truly remarkable is that the public is able to witness something called blowback that just a few years ago was all theoretical, and yet today, my friends, is not theoretical at all. Consider for a moment that just in 2011, the American public was absolutely fine with the idea of the U.S. government going into Libya, overthrowing Gaddafi, conducting airstrikes, protecting the innocent civilians who will die if we go. And then, by 2013, that same American public being told the very same thing about Syria said, no, we're not believing it anymore. We are alive today in the midst of a revolution, a technological revolution, an information revolution. It's a media revolution, a political revolution. It's all taking place around us all the time. It's taking place in this very room tonight. You are part of that revolution. But I want to quickly tell you something to arm you in this fight that you may or may not know. Some of you have heard me speak at different party conventions, libertarian party conventions around the country. Some of you are familiar with this, but for those of you who are not, I feel like I would be remiss not to share this with you. Winston Churchill once said this: men occasionally stumble over the truth, but most of them will pick themselves up and hurry off as if nothing ever happened. Right? You've met some of those people before. You've met some of those people. Some people like this, good friend of ours, Chris Christie, who we use this picture everywhere we go because if you have this picture, why would you not use it? But he said this in 2013, this strain of libertarianism that's going through both parties right now and making very big headlines, he says, I think it's a very dangerous thought. And I think the Governor Chris Christie is absolutely correct. He has burned on a couple of levels. Number one, that it is going through both parties right now. However, let's make no mistake, that libertarians are the ones who truly hold the name rights to libertarianism. It's not republicanism, and it's not being a Democrat, correct? There are strains of it, I hate to tell you. There are strains of it, and that's a good thing, that are moving to other parties. But don't ever relinquish the fact that some of you have been talking about these ideas of liberty for a very, very long time. Fortunate to be sitting at a table with some folks who are exactly that. They've been fighting this fight for a long time, and they've been talking about these ideals for a long time. But he says, Governor Christie says it's a dangerous thought. And when we talk about all the things that are happening, all the different headlines, the different stories, the different things that we're seeing all around us in this country, I would say that as libertarians, when you talk about those things, too often you're talking about the symptoms of the problem, not the disease itself. Too often, we're talking about the symptoms. So what is the disease? Is it this thing? Is it socialism? How many of you believe that our nation is moving towards socialism? That is our one trick question for tonight. So some of you passed. Congratulations. If you think we're moving towards socialism, the year is 1895. We're not moving towards socialism. We have long since, for 100 years, been deeply entrenched in socialism in this country. And that's not all bad. Listen, I want to make something very clear in my fairly brief remarks here. Please understand that nothing I say to you is meant to use a slur. It's not meant to call people names. See, too often in media, we like to call people names. Don't we? So socialist, if you watch Fox News, no offense, my friend. If you watch Fox News, the word socialist is used about every 30 seconds, right? It's this monster that's just over the horizon. It's on its way. It's almost here. It's the socialists who are destroying. It's the socialists who are coming. Socialists, they're here. They're sitting in the living room with their feet on the coffee table, right? But not all socialism is terrible and bad. Voluntary socialism, there are lots of forms of voluntary socialism in our society. There's nothing wrong with the voluntary system in which people choose to share resources. It happens all the time. When evangelicals get all fired up about socialists, just remind them that the book of Acts says the very first Christian movement in the world was in fact a socialist movement. All of the people took their stuff and they sold it and they gave it to the apostles and they said, divide it equally among us. Now, if you make it into what government does, it would be the apostles went to all the people, stole all their stuff, and divided it equally from them. Right? That's where socialism goes wrong, when it's no longer voluntary and when people are forced, compelled to be in the system. Right? All right. So here's what I want to add to your repertoire of name calling. No, just kidding. Not really. But it is a word I want you to become familiar with tonight. And the word is fascist. Fascist, okay? What I want you to be able to focus on is that when you have discussions with people about the issues of liberty, you need to understand that we can argue all day long and finally come to terms on one small issue, let's say foreign policy, and we argue about it and we finally come to an agreement, and then we've got to start on the next issue. The problem is you're fighting all the symptoms and not the disease. So, what do we know about fascism? I want to tell you very quickly what it is not. It's not racism. Fascism is not white supremacy, and it's not the Nazi Party, though some racists are fascists. These are not the criteria of being a racist. So what is it? George Orwell once said this. He said that the word fascism is utterly meaningless. There are people who recklessly will fling the word about in every direction, attaching any rate of emotional significance to it. He says by fascist they mean something cruel, unscrupulous, arrogant, anti-working class, anti-liberal. Except for the relatively small number of fascist sympathizers, almost any English person, he says, would accept the word bully as a synonym for fascist. I think that statement, written in 1946, is very accurate even today. Would you agree? Yes. All right. So in order to get a definition for fascism, I need you to go to Benito Mussolini. Why? Because he is the father of fascism. Literally created it, even gave it the word, this political idea, the word fascist as the name. Okay, so he gets to define it. Fascism should rightly be called corporatism, as it is the merger of corporate and government power. All right? Some of you have seen this quote before, right? And most often where you have seen it was in a documentary called From Freedom to Fascism by Aaron Russo. Now, that quote doesn't actually exist anywhere. So where it came from, no one's really sure. Scholars have looked for it and they can't really find it. However, most scholars will agree that the quote, whether or not exact, captures the spirit of what Mussolini would have said. But here's what your problem is. Your problem is, if you've heard this before, you have probably misinterpreted that word at the top, corporatism. Because what Mussolini was not talking about was the merger of Apple or Google or Yahoo and the state. That's not what he was talking about. What was he talking about? Well, you go back to the original word for corporatism, which in Italian is this word, corporativissimo. Can you say that with me? You want to try? Corporativissimo. Because corporativissimo, my friends, that is the disease. It is the disease that our nation has found itself suffering from. What does it actually mean? Mussolini said this in 1932 in The Doctrine of Fascism. He said this. He said, in the fascist state, the individual is not suppressed, but rather multiplied. Just as in a regiment, a soldier is not weakened, but multiplied by the number of his comrades. The fascist state organizes the nation, but it leaves sufficient scope to individuals. Though it has limited, useless, and harmful liberties, it has preserved them that are essential. It cannot be the individual who decides in this matter, but only the state. What I need you to understand this evening, as we move through this, is that the symptoms of tyranny, the symptoms of eliminating useless and harmful freedoms. So when we talk about the drug war, and we talk about drone strikes, and we talk about indefinite detention, when we talk about red light cameras, as a libertarian, you're arguing all day long about these little different examples of corporativissimo. What is it? It's when the state and the collective come together and say, you, as an individual, possess no rights. You, as an individual, have no value. You have rights that we allow you to have. And we determine what is useless and what is harmful. And that which is useless and harmful, we will take it from you. When you look around yourself, when you argue, when you talk with your friends, help them to understand that what the founders and framers of this country fought to design was a system that would say to the mob, to the corporate, to corporativissimo, you can only come so far. Now there are, I will tell you, quite candidly tonight, two people in this room who I believe, had they had the opportunity in 2012 to speak to the masses and to share a vision for this country, freedom, had the opportunity to attack that sentiment of corporativism. I would not be introducing to you a judge and governor tonight. I would be introducing to you a president and vice president of the United States. Would you welcome with me Governor Gary Johnson, Judge Jim Gray. Gentlemen.
Libertarian ideals, libertarian philosophy is on the ascent. We're going to take back the United States of America and bring back these freedoms, these prosperities, and these equal opportunities that have been slipping through our fingers. This is an inspirational evening. And as we go to the future, knowing that with diligence, with effort, with good libertarian candidates, good libertarian values, that we're going to again bring back this prosperity and bring back our country. I would like to take a short moment to thank numbers of people who have built us up along the way. Today, as you know, Harry Brown received that Lifetime Achievement Award. My goodness sakes, yes. Thank you, Harry Brown. As you know, one of the founders of the Libertarian Party, a fellow by the name of Gary Nolan, envisioned this movement to continue to prosper and to bring back these values. I want to say, and I know you join me, thank you, Gary Nolan. And honestly, today we had a change of leadership of the Libertarian Party of the United States of America. And I hope this works. I know it will work. We're going to go off into the future and prosper and bring that prosperity to our country. But in the meantime, let us all thank Jeff Neal, who has helped us these last few years. And by the way, evenings like this do not just happen. Jeff Neal has a partner whose name is Nancy. Nancy, thank you for giving us this The future should be ours. The Libertarian Party has a philosophy that is consistent. The Libertarian Party has values that are consistent. And the Libertarian Party has values and programs that will work. And we have great optimism for our future, but we have a lot of work to do. As I said earlier today, and I mean it, we have really, proud to say, great candidates all around the country. And I've been blessed to be able to go to various libertarian state conventions and meet different people. We need to support, we need to find good libertarian candidates, get them on their way, and support them. We're on our way, but now is the time. 2014, around the country, we have great libertarian candidates, but we've got to get there to help them get their financing, get their access into the media, and be able to support these candidates. Come on, guys. We need to do that and do this now. We're making progress in the media. Hey, by the way, did you hear this fellow just recently? A fellow by the name of Swann. What do you think of his presentation? What do you think of his contribution? We're on the right side of these issues. And you know something? They're just not that hard. I looked around earlier. We don't see enough young people here. Our young people are bankrupt, literally because of what my generation has been doing. And I'm so embarrassed by this, that my generation has caused our government to be borrowing so much money. Every dollar that we spend, we're borrowing 20 cents, for heaven's sake. But we can turn this around. And I was honored. You honored me, and I've tried to live up to this, to be your vice presidential candidate, 2 years ago in 2012. I took it really seriously. I really cared. If we had been able to have been a part of those three presidential, one vice presidential debates, I think we would have been competitive. It would have changed the face of politics in the United States of America and the rest of the country. I believe that. And honestly, the most important thing that I will have ever been able to do for the country I love is help us pursue this lawsuit that we have against the Presidential Debates Commission, the Republican National Committee, the Democratic National Committee. Please join us. We do need some resources. We do need to get this on its way, and it will change the face of our country. If we had just been able to have our leader last election, Governor Gary Johnson, who asked me to be his running mate, if he had just been a part of these debates, we would have changed the landscape by now. But I introduced to you someone who I believe not only did it in New Mexico, but will do it for the United States of America, would have in 2012. Because what did he do as a governor of New Mexico? He looked at what was going on, and he saw all this crony capitalism. He's a capitalist. He ran his own company, but he said, no, we don't need the government to choose winners and losers in our society. We need the government to stay out of our affairs. And he vetoed more excessive spending measures than all other governors around the United States of America combined. That's what he did. And then he says, in his own joking way, but not really joking, you know, people were predicting that there's going to be riots in the streets. There are going to be babies starving because we're not going to provide all of this money through government. None of that happened. Everything was fine. They built more roads. They did all of this sort of thing. That's what we need. That's what we have. We have great candidates. We have a great philosophy. We're on the right side of the issues. All we need to do is get the word out. Amongst whom? Young people. Hispanics. African American. I don't see an African American particularly with us tonight. Why? If you care about education, you're a libertarian. If you care about immigration reform, you're a libertarian. If you care about getting the government off our backs and restraining our liberty back to where it should be, you're a libertarian. We need to approach these people. We can, we must, we will. And the person that led us in 2012 in this regard is a man that has put this into practice. He's become my friend. He is the one who is able to lead us back to prosperity. And I give you this fellow, my friend, former governor of New Mexico, Governor Gary Larry Johnson, a libertarian.
I had breakfast this morning with Alex McCoben. Is Alex here by chance? All right. Alex says to me, he said, so I guess it was different running for President of the United States as opposed to running for governor because you weren't successful running for President of the United States. I said, Alex, actually, I don't think there was any difference, but there was a difference, and here was the difference. And I've been asked this a bunch. How in the world, Gary, were you ever elected governor of New Mexico? No, I'm asked this all the time. And by people in New Mexico that don't even know how that happened. Well, here's how it happened. How it happened, in New Mexico's 2-to-1 Democrat, and I get elected as a Republican. I had a great team, and it was Ron Nielsen, and he's still part of what I think is a great team. But he put a price tag on the election, on what it would take from a money standpoint to win the election. And basically it was $500,000. And that was leveraging the $500,000 in the primary. Well, I wrote a check, personally, for $500,000. And so we had the money. I wasn't out fundraising at all. I was, but it was just part of the process. But I wrote a check for $500,000. And I don't know if you know this, but I ran 2 campaigns for governor where I did not mention my opponent in print, radio, or television. And it's something that you just don't see anywhere. You don't see it, and yet that's exactly what people are hungry for. What they're hungry for is to hear what it is that you've got to say. They don't want to vote for the lesser of two evils. They genuinely want to vote for ideas. So I think I served up a big dose of ideas. I actually raised $540,000 in my primary campaign. 500 of it was mine. 30 of it came in the last couple of days because it appeared as though I might win the primary. And I won the primary. And at that point, this is no joke, it was basically going to the mailbox and picking up the checks at that point. And at that point, we were able to leverage this new money, which was another $1 million, which was very generously contributed. And I won the governorship. But it wasn't about denouncing others, it was talking about ideas. And you can't believe how many times running as a libertarian I was accused of being a libertarian, not really a Republican, of which I always took great pride. I always took great pride in it because I knew that libertarians stood for something. And I went and I visited the Libertarian Party before I announced my candidacy. I actually considered running as a Democrat. But I was a registered Republican, and I went and visited the Libertarians, and I just didn't see winning the election. That was something that I really thought would be important in the equation, was governing and actually getting to do the job. Well, I got to do that. So back to Alex's question. We really believed that if we would have raised $40 million, that we would have leveraged $40 million to win the presidency. Genuinely believe that, and base that on the amount of money that Ron Paul raised in 2008. And when I entered into the race, Ron Paul was not announced, and it's okay that he ran, and he's incredible hero and wonderful, and I can't say enough about Ron Paul, but he raised the same amount of money the second time, and we ended up raising a total of $1 million, which we're grateful for, really grateful for, a lot of really generous contributions. But $1 million can't be leveraged to win the presidency when the other parties are well over $1 billion. So what I've been asked to talk about is money and raising money and how important it is. And it's your generosity that makes success possible. And there have to be good candidates. And you have to pick good candidates, and you got to give them enough money. And if you give them enough money, all that does is it potentially jumpstarts this phenomenon of the mailbox being filled with checks. Thank you very much for all that you have done for the Libertarian Party and going forward. It is about money, regrettably. It's not about a lot of money, but it's enough money to jumpstart the process, give it to good candidates, and we will prevail. Thank you very much.